Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Not Again with Sandy. This is a channel where I like to talk about my knitting mistakes, consider possible solutions, share lessons learned. If you're a knitter, you've maybe been here with me. We usually start out by discussing our work in progress. Mine is the Leary tee, which is done. It turned out really great. Super happy with it. I was able to complete it with just shy of 3 skeins, which was amazing, even after adding 2 inches of length. When I tried it on just before I was ready to bind it off, I just loved it. Super happy with it. I'll definitely make one again. So now let's move on to the sweater I want to highlight today. This is the Alive and Kicking tank top. See, there's this lace panel there, and I had never done lace. So this was the skill I wanted to make in my next project. Now, I had done lace on another tee, my linen summer tee, but that was just a panel down the sleeve, and it was a short sleeve. So it was a minimally lace experience, which I think was good for me at that time. This was a wider panel, as you saw, and it took some perseverance. I will say that I ended up ripping back, I think at least 3 times. The hard thing about ripping back lace for me is it's hard for me to keep up with the pattern as I am removing the stitches. I don't always know that I'm picking the yarn up for the previous stitch in the right way, if you can follow me there. And I was getting really discouraged by always having to rip back to the stockinette part before the lace panel began. So I talked with my friend Julie, and she talked about using a Lifeline. And I was vaguely aware of Lifelines, but I had not ever used one, but this seemed like the perfect application. Now, if you've never used a Lifeline, there is a part in your circular needle just where the needle is about to meet the cord, and there's a hole there. It's not a very large hole. You would have to use a very slim fiber, but if you thread a fiber through there and then use the needle to knit around, and it will drag that fiber through that whole round. Now you'll want to leave some ends dangling on either side of your round so that as you're knitting the rest of your piece, you are not worried about it stretching out and losing any of those stitches. But the nice thing about that is if for ever any reason you mess things up after you've placed the Lifeline, you can just remove your needle from your row and place it exactly where the Lifeline cord goes through every stitch there, and then you can rip back to that, and you know, because your needle is already there, that you're not going to lose any of those stitches. It was a really good suggestion. So I tried it. Caveat, if you ever do this, you must know that your markers aren't going to move after that. Remember, I was using markers for any pattern that had short repeating sections of a round to keep those separate, so it was very easy for me just to memorize the pattern for that 8 or 10 or 12 inch or stitch section. After I finished that round with the Lifeline, all of my markers were trapped in place. And I did not expect that to happen. I went to knit this thing, and I went to the next round, and oh my gosh, I could not move those markers. So I had to put in an entirely new set and continue knitting. But once I was done with the panel and knew I wasn't going to have to rip back any further, I removed the Lifeline, and of course all my markers returned to me, as I knew they would. But that was really funny. It was a funny looking sweater there for a while with double sets of markers floating in the sweater. The second mistake I made with this sweater, I don't even know quite how I did it, but sometimes as I'm knitting stockinette, I'm not paying attention to the knitting itself. I'm watching TV, or I'm listening to someone talk, or I'm in the car looking around at the scenery. And I can make mistakes where I I'm guessing here that maybe I split the yarn or I don't quite catch the thread or something. I noticed about 3 stitches where they looked very wonky, just really something was messed up there, although I still to this day don't know what that was. And I noticed it several rounds after I had knitted those stitches. So by this point, I had a fair amount of space to try and rip back, which I wasn't that enthused about. And I thought, I think I'm just going to have to live with this and hope nobody notices it. And so I kept knitting. But again, my friend Julie said, had I thought about dropping down and repairing those stitches? And I had heard of that, but didn't really understand how it worked. So I'm sure you can find YouTube videos that will help you with this. But basically, if you've got a stitch or more than one stitch, you can take them off your needles wherever you're at, as long as it's exactly the same stitches that you need to repair, and then just let that stitch come out. It'll just unravel down to wherever you need it to be, and then you can use a crochet hook and slowly bring those stitches back up and put them on your needle. Mine did not turn out very well, sadly. I did 3 stitches at once, and I saw a video which made it look like this was very possible. They just brought down all 3 stitches, unraveled to that point, and then slowly with a crochet hook wove them back up. And they cautioned about being careful with your tension, indicating that the first stitch you're repairing, this first line of stitches, I should say, you're repairing, are going to be pretty loose. And then as you get closer to the last stitch, it's going to be tighter. But the person with the podcast, I apologize, I don't remember who that was, what seemed able to adjust the tension with just some kind of tugs and with the yarn in various places. When I did it, my first stitch was very loose, my second line of stitches was about right, and the third line of stitches was very tight. And it didn't matter what I did, it did not ever kind of even out. Even after I blocked it, which I really had high hopes for blocking, that it would work itself out a little bit, it still looks pretty bad, actually. Really obvious if one were to see it. And again, the only blessing I have there is it is under my right breast, so a person would have to be actually looking at kind of an awkward area to see it. But yeah, I'm not happy with how that turned out. Thinking about it now, I think it would have been better to just do 1 line of stitches at a time. And then tension should not have been a problem. I could have just taken 1 stitch down as far as I needed to, knit it back up, and then do the same with the second and the third. I've done that often with just a single stitch, and I've never had a problem with tension. It seemed to just, with a little bit of, stretching and pulling a little bit, it seemed to fold right back into this the appropriate amount of tension that I would expect each stitch to have. Very even tension. So yeah, that was a bit distressing. I'm just glad it's a pretty dark colored sweater and it's not super obvious. So what am I going to make next? Well, it is October 1st as I am recording this. So naturally, I'm thinking about Christmas knitting. Oh boy, I don't always do this to myself every year, but there are times when I decided I found this hat pattern I really liked. I'm like, I'm just going to make everyone a hat for Christmas. And there was all different weights of yarn. So sometimes it was a large hat and sometimes it was a small hat. Sometimes I held yarn together, so it was a medium hat. And I made 16 hats that Christmas. So one for everybody that was coming to our house Christmas Eve. Everybody really seemed to like them, and I think they've been used. Anyway, I didn't even buy any yarn for it. I just used yarn I had. I was able to use up a lot of my stash that way. That was a good feeling too. I'm going to make 2 sweaters for my grandsons. Now you've heard me mention my 6-year-old grandson. I also have a 9-year-old grandson. And I'm hoping they're at the age where they wouldn't mind a sweater. But I asked their mother, my daughter, and she thought they would like them. So the pattern I'm going to use is Tin Can Knits Flax Pullover. This is a great pattern. It just works well for any age, and she has such a range of sizes in there, all the way from infants to adult. It's a lovely pattern, and it's free. I've made this sweater often as an infant sweater to give as a gift to someone that's just had a baby, and I kind of time the size of it for when they'll be entering the winter months, so it'll be useful. I'm going to use this yarn. This colors were suggested by their mother. So this is I Love This Yarn by Hobby Lobby. It's a nice, really nice worsted acrylic yarn. Got this blue and this green. So one will be blue, one will be green. And I hope they turn out well, and I hope I can get them done in time for Christmas. I have, almost 3 months, so I think I will be able to. I really hope so. But that's my plan right now. So fingers crossed, this is all gonna go well. Thanks for joining me.